Each straw hat already has a characteristic and particular power in one piece, but if we were to give each of them a different power, or if each of them ate a totally different Akuma no Mi, what powers would they have? Would these fruits match their current characteristics and abilities? If you're curious, stick with me and follow this video to the end because the last Akuma no Mi will surprise you. JINBE. JINBE is a merman and has all the special characteristics that his race gives him. So for him, eating an Akuma no Mi is more of a disadvantage than an advantage. He would completely lose his ability to swim, and would no longer be able to shape water as he currently does, and with this power he was even able to save everyone on Onigashima. So for him to decide to eat an Akuma no Mi, it would have to be a very appealing power or a power that would compensate for the lack of being able to swim and mold water as he currently does. So a power that would be very common and retain all its characteristics is Sui Sui no Mi. An Akuma no Mi that allows its user to swim on the ground as if it were water, or interact with the ground as if it were water. With this fruit, JINBE would lose the ability to swim in water, but would be able to swim on the ground. In addition, all the Triton karate techniques he uses in water he could use on the ground. Oda agrees with this so much that even JINBE's Seraphim uses a copy of this fruit and uses his Triton karate on the ground, molding it as if it were water. FRANKY. For FRANKY I was torn between two fruits, the Buki Buki no Mi fruit of Baby Five's weapons or the Baku Baku no Mi fruit of Wapple's munchies. But what made me decide on the fruit of the feast is that FRANKY has already faced the fruit of the weapons and was able to subdue it with extreme ease. Against the FRANKY Shogun it could do absolutely nothing, and FRANKY himself, with his technological devices, is far more effective than she is. Even more so if we take into account his radical has-been. But with the Baku Baku no Mi, FRANKY could eat any kind of object or weapon, and use the characteristics of all this in his metal body. So he could eat cannons and guns and recreate them in his own body, or even merge the Mugiwaras as he wanted to do in Thriller Bark but Robin didn't want him to. Here, he could merge Luffy and Zoro and create the loneliest character in the anime world. Besides, the Wapple metal he used to build FRANKY Shogun could be created almost infinitely by himself so that he could make new inventions and even reinforce Sunny. But it wouldn't be called Wapple metal, it would be called Superior metal. And if we consider that Vegapunk is going to sail with the Straw Hats, imagine what absurd creations they could come up with. USOPP. We know that USOPP is an unprecedented marksman and very fearful too. So, for him, a great Akuma no Mi would be one that amplifies both his ability as a shooter and his fear and ability to flee. If we were to count an ideal Akuma no Mi for him, which still doesn't exist in the story, it would be the chameleon fruit, the animal that officially represents USOPP, because he could easily camouflage himself in the environment to shoot and hide from his enemies without being noticed. But since this fruit doesn't exist canonically, so we have to choose another fruit that does basically the same thing. The best fruit for USOPP would be the Suk Suk no Mi invisibility fruit, an Akuma no Mi that allows the user and everything they touch to become invisible. So not only could USOPP become invisible to any enemy on the battlefield, he could also make his weapons and anyone he touches invisible too. This could be used for stealth attacks or to escape from your enemies, or even the navy. Because USOPP could make Sunny invisible and with that they could easily escape from an island or a navy siege. Sanji. It would be cliché for Sanji to think of a fruit that could further amplify the fire he creates. Or his cooking skills, since he's a master in the kitchen. So the oven fruit, the Sabo fruit, or even the Akainu fruit would be powers we can rule out. Or even Strawson's fruit capable of turning anything he touches into food. Sanji's desire to become invisible so he can spy on women in the bath is also ruled out because it's already been used for USOPP. And even the fruit that Oda would give him, which is Sui Sui no Mi, is a power that doesn't make much sense for Sanji, or makes more sense with JINBE as we've already used in this video. But an Akuma no Mi that would make a lot of sense both for Sanji to spy on women and for his kicking fighting style is the power of Walpo Walpo no Mi, Van Alger's teleporting fruit. An Akuma no Mi that was recently introduced in the manga. This fruit gives its user the power to teleport short distances in an instant, but there is also the possibility of teleporting from one island to another, and it also affects other people who are in contact with the user. This power would be perfect for Sanji to spy on women and escape unnoticed, or it would go very well with his kicking fighting style. Just imagine Sanji kicking and teleporting at the same time in an absurd combo against his enemies. And maybe he can even teleport huge things like a ship, so that the Mugiwaras can escape from various dangerous situations, or even hide Sunny in places no one would look. Robin. Robin already has a very strong Akuma no Mi that goes very well with her profession as an archaeologist, and even as a spy. But if she didn't have this fruit, I can only see the main no Mi fruit of the Bon Clay imitation as a power that would suit her very well. With the main no Mi she wouldn't be able to access uninhabited places as she normally does by creating eyes and ears with her Hana no Mi. But with the imitation fruit, she could easily impersonate other people and infiltrate places she could never reach with her current power. She could even have escaped the world government more easily by impersonating other people, and would still have been able to continue her search for archaeological manuscripts and the discovery of the Poneglyph River. I'm sure that with this power, her life would have been easier throughout the period she spent alone. And maybe she could even infiltrate the world government and discover its secrets, since they would never think of looking for her in their own domain. Chopper. Chopper is a reindeer who only has consciousness because he ate a human-type Akuma no Mi, the Hito no Mi. An Akuma no Mi that gives human characteristics to things or animals. So if he didn't eat the normal Hito no Mi, which is his current Akuma no Mi and which gives him 13 transformations in all. I've even made a video about it, link on the card. He would have to eat another Hito no Mi type Akuma no Mi, or he wouldn't have the consciousness of a person. But it would just be an irrational animal with uncontrolled power. Among the Hito no Mi, I don't see him eating Luffy's Akuma no Mi, the Nika model, or Sengoku's Hito no Mi Daibutsu model. So a human-type Akuma no Mi that would be perfect for him, and would still give Chopper human characteristics so that he could remain as we know him, is the mythical Hito no Mi model on Yudo. An Akuma no Mi that would allow Chopper to transform into a yokai monk from Japanese folklore. With this fruit, Onimaru was able to transform into this giant monk and even proved strong enough to give Zoro a hard time, even if Zoro wasn't fighting seriously. So that would be the best fruit for him. Zoro. If you've already watched the video about the 5 best Akuma no Mi for Zoro here on the channel, the link is on the card above. You've seen that the best Akuma no Mi for Zoro are the fruits capable of giving a power that expands Zoro's ability to be a swordsman. Since he would never stop being a swordsman or use his 3 swords to rely on just one Akuma no Mi power. So, a great power for Zoro that expands all his capabilities is the leopard model Nico no Mi. This Akuma no Mi suits Zoro perfectly because it's a carnivorous fruit, just like Zoro hunting down his enemies. It gives Zoro a burst of strength, speed and endurance, both in his full and hybrid forms. Not to mention the appealing awakening that Zoans have, which give their user greater strength, endurance and regeneration, with the possibility of them even coming back to life after almost being killed. These are great features for Zoro, who always goes to great lengths to defeat his enemies, and takes damage that could kill him. So, Zoro with a carnivorous Zoan like the Nico no Mi would become absurdly strong. Brook's Akuma no Mi is one of the most important in terms of history because it was through it that he was able to survive for 50 years in the Florian Triangle and then join the Straw Hat Gang. But on the other hand, this fruit was kind of useless while he was alive, and if he'd had a stronger Akuma no Mi, the Rumbar pirates might not have been decimated. So, if Brook hadn't eaten the Yami no Mi, he could have eaten the Oto no Mi fruit of sound. Being a musician, this fruit suits him perfectly. An Akuma no Mi that allows its user to transform their entire body into various musical instruments to launch various melodies. These melodies can cut, explode or even hypnotize enemies, depending on how well the user masters this power. With this fruit, Brook could have saved his companions and perhaps they could have left the Grand Line and returned to the lagoon. But the problem is that he probably wouldn't have been able to join the Straw Hats because he was already old. But since we're only thinking of other powers for the Mugiwaras, as we currently know them, so that would be his new power. Nami. For Nami there are 3 Akuma no Mi that would be perfect taking into account 3 of her characteristics, such as, Time Witch, Crazy about money, and controlling men. 1 is the Goro no Mi Eno Lightning Fruit, a power chosen by Oda himself for its ability to work with the weather. But with it, Nami would be absurdly strong. So let's rule it out. It could be Guild to Zoro's Goro no Mi Gold Fruit, but it doesn't allow you to create gold, only to manipulate the gold that exists in a certain place and that the user has touched before. It's also a non-canonical power. So there's only 1 fruit left for his man-dominating characteristics, which in this case is Horo no Mi, a Paramecia-type Akuma no Mi that allows its user to create ghostly specters for various purposes, from denying their enemies to blowing them up. With this power, there wouldn't be a single man, except Usopp, who wouldn't fall at Nami's feet after they became negative with the ghosts she created. So Nami could dominate any and all men, except Usopp who is the natural predator of this Akuma no Mi, link in the card up here for you. With this power she could dominate entire armies and still keep her body safe in the sunny by going into battle only in her spectral form, a form that is impossible to be hit by enemy attacks, and she can still create her various ghosts. Luffy. To round off this list we have Luffy, the man destined to become the king of the pirates. He even ate the Hito no Mi model Nika and became the greatest danger to the world government. Now, if we think that Luffy didn't eat this Akuma no Mi, what power would he have, taking into account his similarities to Joy Boy, the giants and his genius in battle? Well, of all the Akuma no Mi that Luffy could use to awaken his creativity, the one that makes the most sense in terms of the story and Luffy being the new Joy Boy is the Deka Deka no Mi fruit of the gigantic human eaten by San Juan Wolf. This fruit gives its user the ability to become so large that he can be 10 times bigger than a normal giant. With this power he can even reach the bottom of the sea and walk on water without losing his strength. Using his creativity and the maximum power that this Akuma no Mi gives him, Luffy could control how much he wants to giganticize a certain part of his body and even use it as a kind of third gear. If he could control the gigantification characteristic of his body for various purposes, he could also amplify his muscles while maintaining his size and covering all this with weapons haki to enter a different kind of gear 4. And he could also become a giant by arriving on the island of the giants and enjoy the whole adventure as one of them.